Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have 4 brand new revenge stories for you. And our first story, caught because he tipped the waitress $50 with my credit card. To jail with you. I was working full-time and going to college full-time. After my morning chemistry lab, I drove from campus up to where I worked only to realize my wallet was missing from my purse. I'd used it that morning, but it was nowhere to be found. I called my credit card company, and sure enough, there was a recent transaction at a local bar for a large tab. I think any normal person would have claimed fraud and called the rest of the wallet items a loss. I immediately called the police to report my wallet stolen either while I was in class or perhaps some other time during the day. The police told me to contact a different jurisdiction. School was on a reservation. Called the reservation police, who told me it's also not their jurisdiction since I wasn't sure the loss occurred on campus and I'd discovered the loss elsewhere. Cue my frustration and the budding vengeance. I'm a people person, having worked retail operations for years, and have a good sense about how to communicate with employees. I called the restaurant where my card was used and gave a description of the situation along with the last digits of the card number. The luckiest part was the woman on the line happened to be the server. She gave me some key information that she legally should never have provided to someone who wasn't the authorities, but I think my story appealed to her. She said the tab was so high because they left such a huge tip, and the guy who used the credit card said his girlfriend was treating him to lunch and drinks, hence the female name on the card. As well, he was with 2 people who paid for their own food and drinks with their own credit card. I asked her for the name on that second card, which she gave up without thinking twice. If that wasn't shady enough, I took advantage of a customer database to find a phone number for the uniquely named non-stealing gentleman who paid for his own tab while dining with the thief. I built up the nerve to call the innocent guy a couple days later, claiming to be a private investigator. I calmly warned him that he could be considered an accomplice to the crime if he didn't provide the name and phone number of the person he ate with at that specific restaurant. He was nervous and didn't want to help, saying that he should call his lawyer before talking to me. I told him, as a private investigator, I would ensure he's not held accountable if he would cooperate. He could only provide a name, but no phone number. Without the thief's phone number coming up in that customer database, I turned to social media. The name pulled up a local private profile. At the time, Facebook allowed banners to still be visible, which, if I remember the Stone Age of Facebook, was basically a status. His status was complaining about a chem lab test that I too was about to take. I didn't recognize his face, but could now confirm it was stolen from lab if my professor could ID his picture. I printed the Facebook page with his picture and status and brought it to my chem teacher. I explained the situation, and he told me the student sat at the corner of my table. It all made sense, because in chem lab, we'd put our bags and purses at the front of the class so as to not contaminate them with whatever we worked with. That was when he'd stolen my wallet from my purse days before. Working with my professor, the campus police came in during class and arrested him. Best part? He was on probation for some other misdemeanor, so was actually put in jail for this crime. I wasn't a part of the trial or anything like that, but I did explain my tactic to the reservation police, who patted me on the back. Oh, and I received compensation checks from his prison for like $2 each until my $50 fossil wallet loss was remediated. As a much older person, I now hope he has his life together. I didn't remember much of him in class, but I was a very focused student. We all make mistakes, but his youth seemed to be defined by a string of bad choices. Looking at his name in public records shows he hasn't quite found the right path. This is absolutely amazing. You just took justice into your own hands and set the stage for ProRevenge. And our second story. The most expensive way ever to get police involved. My wife and I had a first-floor condo in what had previously been a nice complex. Unfortunately, over time, the couple who lived above us, hereafter designated AA for Angry Alcoholic and AAG for Angry Alcoholic Girlfriend, began drinking heavily. Or maybe they just got louder about their drinking. Nearly every night became a massive screaming match between them. They'd stay up until 2 a.m. shouting at each other at the top of their lungs. Then one of them would put on music at top volume to drown out the other. Their taste in music wasn't actually bad, but when it's 2 a.m. and my floor is vibrating, it's a problem. Sometimes they'd even take their fight out to the parking lot, just to be sure all the neighbors were treated to a detailed explanation of who had cheated on who recently, both, and who was threatening to dump who and leave right now. Neither of them ever actually left. They just went out to their car and threatened to, loudly. Then in the mornings, he would work on his car in the carport right outside of our front door. As far as I can tell, all he did was sit there and rev the engine for what seemed like hours on end. I have no idea when he slept. Maybe while we were at work? We and other neighbors complained to the condo board, who issued a warning, which AA and AAG ignored. Eventually, the condo board started fining them, but AA found a genius solution: just don't pay the fine. All the condo board could do was eventually put a lien on AA's condo, but that would only become a problem for him when he sold the place. Apparently, they couldn't actually foreclose on him. Or maybe they just didn't want to go to the trouble. Trying to talk to him directly was useless. If we managed to catch him during a rare moment of sobriety, he'd kind of just blow us off. But if we caught him while he was drunk, he'd get pretty threatening and was then even louder for a few days. We even tried calling the police, but they weren't really interested unless he actually crossed the line into a felony. They gave him a few warnings, which he also ignored. Maybe if he'd actually beaten me or one of my neighbors up, they'd have done something, but none of us felt like getting into a fight to find out. Plus, there was always the risk that the cops would arrest everybody involved in the fight on general principle, and none of us wanted an arrest record. Eventually, my wife and I decided to sell our condo and move, for multiple reasons that definitely included AA and AAG. Because of the timing of our move, our realtor wound up actually showing the condo while we were at home a couple of times, and we discovered that one of the potential buyers was a city police officer, her husband, and their 1-year-old baby. I guess their old place was too small now that they had a kid. Unfortunately, their offer was $3,500 below the top offer. After talking it over, we told our realtor to accept the offer anyway, and we'd just eat the loss. So AA and AAG had a cop move in directly below them. I'm Facebook friends with a couple of our old neighbors, and in the 6 months since we moved, AA has been arrested multiple times, his car's been impounded at least once. Apparently he's now trying to be quieter, but that only lasts until he gets drunk, and then he's screaming again. And his new downstairs neighbor has long ago had enough of his crap and doesn't appreciate it when he wakes up her kid. I guess she also doesn't appreciate it when he shouts at her. He's in an obnoxious neighbor war with a cop, and he's losing badly. Hopefully soon he'll wind up in jail for longer than a couple of days. And our next story. Drunken woman berates me when I'm trying to help. A few years ago, I worked overnight, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., for an insurance company. I did roadside service, which consisted of people calling in about a flat tire, a dead battery, or in this case, keys locked in the car. I'd then call and pay a contracted company to go out and help. So around 3 a.m. my time, a woman calls in from Phoenix for help. She's locked out of her car. She started the call off very impatient and belligerent. First off, she was slurring heavily, so I was having a hard time getting her address, which I guess was my fault. I had to have her repeat the city a few times since I genuinely could not understand her. She hated this and began mocking me and implying I wasn't from the country, which in fact I was. Apparently my southern accent didn't allude to that. Anyway, once I get the address, I asked what the address was for a reference for the locksmith. House, store, gas station, etc. She said it was a house. I looked it up in Google Maps and it was in fact a dive bar. Put her on hold to call the locksmith. Once I got back over, she continued to be generally displeased and angry at me personally that it would take 45 minutes for the locksmith to get there, which is actually a decent time, especially past midnight. And it was my fault she'd have to wait for her keys. Whatever. I hung up with her and Googled the local police, called them and reported her for a potential DUI, mostly because she pissed me off. Sure enough, about 45 minutes later, the locksmith called back saying he couldn't perform the service. I could hear yelling in the background. Apparently, the woman began fighting with the police when they arrived and was being arrested by the time the driver showed up. Her boyfriend/husband, who the driver said seemed sober, was trying to talk them out of it. So it turns out she did have a DD, but her drunken anger made her start fighting the police that showed up. Be nice to call center employees, people. Good job, OP. Not only did you get revenge, you may have saved a few lives. And our last story. I'm no longer needed? Hope you don't beg me to come back 2 months later. I was an intern at a local wedding magazine during college. Small office of 3 interns who put the mag together with an editor who will always be the most incompetent person I've ever worked with. And I've worked in food service. Anyway, after months of petty bullcrap, my car broke down over Thanksgiving. I called the editor, letting her know that just in case I was ever late showing up, as I planned to take the bus or bum rides. Her response, "Oh, your car broke down? Well, you're no longer needed as an intern." Click. B, did you just hang up on me? I was mad, but I took that call as a blessing in disguise and decided to forget about it. We weren't getting paid as interns, so who cares? 2 months later, it's a Saturday. I'm relaxing at home when I get a call. Guess who? "Hey, OP, listen, I'm sorry about that call during Thanksgiving break. My phone dropped it. We're trying to get this month's edition printed, and I can't keep up with all the mail, the ads, and the phone calls. It's crazy here, and the other girls quit. Can you believe that? When are you going to be back in the office?" Readers, it's been 4 years since that Saturday, but even now, I can still feel that incredible sense of petty joy. You said I was no longer needed as an intern 2 months ago. I've already accepted a position elsewhere. My new boss doesn't call me on weekends and actually pays me. Lose my number. Click. She really expected another outcome? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.